Have you ever wondered if God is speaking through the chaos of our times? This is the true story of Zelda Karishma, a 63-year-old woman received a life-altering message after returning from the brink of death. In the afterlife, she met Jesus, who showed her a terrifying future, one we could face if we ignore God's call. Among the shocking visions, Jesus revealed that Elon Musk plays a pivotal role in humanity's destiny. His decisions on technology, AI, and space exploration could either save or destroy the future of mankind. This is a call for urgency, a divine warning we cannot ignore. We stand at a crossroads. The choices we make today will shape tomorrow. Will we choose faith over technology, light over darkness, or will we lose everything? The time to act is now. Like, subscribe, and share this message with the world. Let's delve into God's warnings to us. At first, no one could believe the story that Zelda Karishma had to tell. It was a strange, inexplicable story, one that even she herself couldn't fully understand. But as she shared it, each word she spoke carried a weight and power that made listeners pause, reflect, and sometimes even shiver with the truth of it. Zelda Karishma was a mother, a grandmother, and a woman who had lived 70 years on this earth. She wasn't famous, not a woman of remarkable fame or extraordinary deeds, but her story was about to become something far beyond what anyone could imagine. She still remembers, as though it happened just yesterday, the moment before everything changed, the moment when her body simply couldn't take it any longer. A mysterious illness had struck her, and though the doctors tried everything they could, it wasn't enough. They finally told her family that Zelda was gone. Her children, Amy and Ethan, stood by her side, their faces etched with grief. Her husband, long since passed, was surely watching from a distant place, his love still reaching her in spirit. But then, something happened, a miracle that could not be explained by science or medicine. Zelda tells us she doesn't recall exactly how she drifted into unconsciousness, but she remembers the feeling of her body surrendering, giving way to something beyond herself. It was a slow release, the weight of illness pulling her down as though the earth itself was claiming her. And then, when she opened her eyes once more, she wasn't in that sterile hospital room anymore. She wasn't surrounded by machines, by the beep of monitors, or the cold touch of medical staff. No. What greeted her was something far beyond the physical realm. There was light. But not just any light. It wasn't the kind of light that blinded you or burned your eyes. This light was warm and inviting, like a comforting embrace. It was unlike anything she had ever seen in her life. It filled every part of her, wrapping around her in a way that brought deep peace, a peace that seemed to touch her very soul. And then, she understood. She was no longer on earth. She was standing in the presence of the divine. It was Jesus. She knew it with all her heart. His gaze was not just a look. It was as though he could see every part of her, every sin, every sorrow, every joy. His presence was overwhelming, overflowing with love, but also sorrow, a sorrow that weighed heavily on the light of that place. Zelda felt that sorrow too, a deep ache, as if he was grieving for all the pain, the brokenness, and the choices of humanity. She couldn't fully describe the visions that came next. They were beyond comprehension, beyond earthly understanding. Jesus showed her what was happening in the world, where humanity was headed, and what was at stake. One of the most startling things he revealed to her was a person who would be at the center of these future events: Elon Musk. I know what you might be thinking. Elon Musk? It might seem absurd, but Zelda was insistent. She was sure of it. God had revealed to her that Elon Musk, this man of great wealth and power, was somehow central to the future of humanity. And then, before she could even process what had just happened, Jesus spoke to her. Zelda, you must return. You must share this message with the world. You have seen what is to come. You have seen what will happen if people do not change. Zelda was sent back. Not by her own will, but by divine command. When she opened her eyes again, she found herself back in that hospital room. Her daughter Amy was holding her hand, tears streaming down her face, her eyes wide with disbelief. Ethan, her son, stood frozen, his expression a mix of confusion and awe. The nurses were whispering to each other, exchanging glances, still uncertain what to make of the impossible event unfolding before them. And then Zelda gasped, a sharp intake of breath, so sudden, so real, that Amy screamed. The sound of the scream echoed in the sterile room. The family stood in shock as their mother, their grandmother, was suddenly alive again, breathing as if she had never left. "Mom?" Amy's voice trembled as she grasped Zelda's hand. What happened? You were gone, you were dead." Zelda smiled weakly, her body still heavy, still recovering from the weight of death, but her voice strong, filled with a calm conviction. "I've been sent back," she whispered, her voice hoarse but clear. "I have a message to share. It's not just for me, it's for the world, and it's about Elon Musk." Amy looked at her mother with confusion in her eyes. "Elon Musk? What do you mean?" she asked, disbelief heavy in her voice. "Yes," Zelda said, her voice firm now, her eyes locking with Ethan's. "He's at the heart of it. He plays a role in what's coming. The choices he makes will affect all of us. I saw it." The room fell into a stunned silence. The weight of Zelda's words hung in the air, and though there were many questions, the one thing everyone knew was this: something extraordinary had happened, and no matter how unbelievable it seemed, the message was clear. "I know this is hard to understand," Zelda continued, her voice softer now, "but you need to hear me. This isn't just about me. This is about all of us. The world is changing, and there's a part of this change that is tied to Elon Musk. His decisions will have a global impact." Amy opened her mouth, unsure of how to respond. "Mom, you've just been through so much. Maybe this is some kind of dream or hallucination?" Zelda looked her daughter in the eye, her gaze filled with calm certainty. "No, Amy, I know what I saw. It wasn't a dream, it was real. This message is real, and we have to be prepared." The doctor entered the room then, but Zelda held up a hand. "Please," she said, her voice pleading, "just listen. It's not about whether you believe me or not. It's about what's coming, and we need to be ready." Everyone in that room, Amy, Ethan, Caleb, the doctor, could feel the weight of her words. They weren't just words. They were a calling, a divine commission, and no matter how much they struggled to grasp it, something had shifted in the atmosphere. Zelda Karishma had returned, not just to live, but to bear witness to something that could not be ignored. Zelda's heart raced as she recalled everything she had seen, every vision, every revelation. It was as though she had been given a glimpse into a future that few would ever see. A future shaped by the choices of powerful individuals, one of them being Elon Musk, a man whose actions could change the course of history. As Zelda spoke, her words filled the room with a sense of urgency. She didn't know how long she would have left to share this message, but one thing was certain. She had been sent back for a reason. She had been given a glimpse of what was to come, and now it was her duty to share it with the world. And so Zelda Karishma, a mother and grandmother who had once walked the earth as just another ordinary soul, became something more. She became a messenger, a divine vessel carrying a warning for a world on the brink of change. The question is, will we listen? Jesus didn't look like the pictures you see in churches or paintings. He wasn't pale or distant. He was radiant, yet his eyes carried a depth I couldn't comprehend. They were kind, but they also saw everything, every thought, every deed, every secret I had ever held in my heart. His gaze wasn't condemning, though. It was loving, but truthful. It was as if he could see the whole of me all at once, and he still loved me. Zelda's heart swelled with awe as Jesus spoke her name, not in words, but in a voice that seemed to come from within her, around her, through her. He told her that she was there for a moment only, and that her work on earth was not yet done. "I am sending you back," he said, and though Zelda had just arrived in this place of perfect peace, she knew she had no choice but to return. "Why?" Zelda asked, stunned. "Why must I leave this place?" But Jesus was unwavering in his call. He told her there was a message she had to deliver, a message not just for her, but for the world. And at that moment, visions began to flood Zelda's mind. She saw the earth, spinning in the vastness of space, beautiful, yet fragile. Humanity, so busy and distracted, rushing toward an unknown future. But amidst the beauty, there were shadows creeping in, greed, corruption, and a reliance on things humanity did not control. And then, one name stood out: Elon Musk. Zelda saw him clearly in the midst of this chaos. He was standing at the center of a futuristic world, surrounded by glass towers and machines that seemed alive. There were whispers behind him, voices of encouragement and voices of doubt. It was as if Musk were walking a tightrope between creation and destruction. And Jesus' voice, steady and full of sorrow, echoed in Zelda's mind. He is at a crossroads. The choices he makes will shape not just this world, but worlds to come. At first, Zelda didn't understand. Why Elon Musk? Why this man so famous for his space ventures and technological innovations? But as Jesus showed her more, it became clear. She saw Musk's work: spaceships hurtling toward distant planets, machines with the ability to think and feel, technology connecting human minds to computers. These were not just inventions, but tools that could either elevate humanity or sever it from its soul. "Pray for him," Jesus told Zelda. "Pray for the choices he will make, for the enemy seeks to use his brilliance against him." Zelda felt the gravity of these words settle upon her like a heavy cloak. She wanted to ask more questions, to understand more, but the visions continued, pouring in faster than she could comprehend. In one vision, she saw the earth alive, vibrant, a place where technology and faith worked together in harmony. In another, she saw a cold, lifeless world, dominated by machines, a world that had lost its soul. The future was at a crossroads, and the choices of men like Elon Musk would determine which path humanity would take. "Zelda," Jesus said again, his voice both gentle and firm, "you must go back and tell them. Tell them what you have seen. This path is not set in stone. There is still time." Before Zelda could protest, before she could ask, "Why me?" the light began to fade. The music, the colors, the warmth, all of it started slipping away, and she felt herself being pulled back to her earthly body. The next thing she knew, she was gasping for breath, her daughter's voice screaming in the background, and the world around her crashing back into focus. She had returned. But even as she gasped for air in her frail, aging body, the message was already etched onto her soul. She had been sent back for a reason, and she couldn't ignore what she had seen. The future of humanity depended on the choices we make today. It depended on our prayers, our faith, and our willingness to listen to the call of God. The hospital room was a blur of confusion and disbelief. Zelda's daughter Amy was sitting by her side, her hand trembling in Zelda's. Ethan and Caleb stood nearby, their faces pale and full of worry. Dr. Reynolds stood off to the side, arms crossed, skeptical yet curious. Nurses whispered to each other in the corner, unsure what to make of the impossible situation. But Zelda didn't have time for doubts. She had seen the future, and she knew she had to share it, no matter how unbelievable it seemed. "I know this is hard to understand," Zelda began, her voice trembling but steady. "I know how impossible it sounds, but I'm telling you, I saw Jesus. I stood before him, and he showed me things I can't unsee. He gave me a message that the world needs to hear." Amy tried to smile, but it was weak. She wanted to believe her mother, but the confusion in her eyes said it all. "Mom, you've been through so much. Maybe this is just your mind trying to make sense of it all." Zelda squeezed her daughter's hand, a deep resolve filling her. "It's not my mind, Amy. I'm not confused. I'm not crazy. This is real. Jesus spoke to me, and he told me to come back for a reason." Ethan, clearly skeptical, rubbed his neck nervously. "Grandma, you're saying you saw Jesus, and he sent you back with a message for us? For the world?" Zelda looked him directly in the eyes, her voice unwavering. "I know you don't believe me, Ethan, but you will. You have to listen. This isn't about me. This is about all of us. Jesus showed me what's coming, and it's bigger than anything we can imagine." Caleb, who had been silent until now, shifted uncomfortably by the window. "You mentioned Elon Musk. Why would Jesus talk about him? He's just a guy who builds rockets and electric cars, right?" Zelda leaned forward, her voice firm and urgent. "He's not just a guy. He's at the center of something much bigger than himself. Jesus showed me a future where Musk's decisions, his work with artificial intelligence, space exploration, and neural technology will determine the fate of humanity. He has the power to create or destroy, to lead us toward salvation or ruin. Right now, he's at a crossroads." The room fell silent. Even Dr. Reynolds, who had been checking Zelda's vitals, stopped to listen. The weight of Zelda's words hung in the air, and though the room was filled with doubt and disbelief, there was a quiet understanding that something profound had been said. "Jesus showed me a vision," Zelda continued. "He showed me the earth, the way it is now and the way it could be. He showed me humanity's progress, our technology, our achievements, but also the dangers we've created for ourselves. Elon Musk was at the center of it all. The choices he makes will determine the future of us all." Amy frowned, her mind racing. "Mom, why Elon Musk? Why him of all people?" Zelda's answer was simple. Because the future of humanity depends on the choices of men like him. And right now, we must pray for him. Pray for the choices he will make, for they will shape the world. And with that, the truth that had been placed in her heart began to take root in the hearts of her listeners. Whether they understood or not, they knew something had shifted. And now, the message had to be shared, for the fate of the world was at stake. The words Jesus spoke to Zelda Karishma that day have echoed in her heart ever since, and in the hearts of all who have listened to her. It wasn't a message of simple encouragement. It was a warning, a plea for action, a divine warning wrapped in love and urgency. And though many may scoff or question, the truth remains. The future of humanity, of the world, may hang on a decision made by one man and the prayers of millions. You see, Jesus didn't just speak about salvation and the eternal soul in his teachings. He spoke of the now. He spoke of the world we live in and the choices we make today. And in the moment Zelda stood before him, as she saw with divine clarity, he showed her two possible futures, both of which depend on the choices of one man, Elon Musk. As Zelda recounted to me, it wasn't just a vision. It wasn't a mere glimpse into some far-off possibility. It was real. The first future she saw was one of harmony, where technology worked in concert with faith and nature. It was a world where humanity had learned to use innovation for good, healing, connecting, restoring, and loving one another as Christ commanded. It was a world where man had found the right balance between progress and faith. But the other future, well, it was a nightmare. A world ravaged by cold efficiency, ruled by machines that had stripped humanity of its soul. The very things we've created to serve us had instead enslaved us. Technology, once our greatest tool, had become our greatest prison. There was no love, no joy, no connection, only loneliness and despair. "The choice is his," Zelda had said, speaking with a fire that surprised even me. but it is also ours. And she was right. We are all responsible, in some measure, for what happens next. Jesus had made it clear to her that the path was not yet set in stone. We still had time, but that time was growing shorter. Her family had their doubts, of course. My own heart wavered as I listened to her recount the vision. She wasn't asking us to follow some new doctrine or to place our faith in a man. She was asking for something simple yet profound: prayer. Prayer for Elon Musk, prayer for the future, and prayer for all of us to stay on the right path. Why him? Ethan had asked, still skeptical, though his curiosity seemed to outweigh his disbelief. Why not other leaders or powerful figures? Why does this one man matter so much? Because he's not just one man anymore, Zelda replied, her voice steady despite the frailty of her body. He's become a symbol of our future, a leader in fields that are reshaping the world. He stands on a precipice, and what he does next will ripple through all of humanity. Jesus told me this. He's not infallible. He's human, just like us, and right now, he's vulnerable. And we must pray for him. We must pray that he has the wisdom to make the right choices. And it's true. Elon Musk is a man whose work is shaping our world in ways that we may not fully understand yet. His ventures into space, his innovations in artificial intelligence, and his ambitious plans for humanity's future are both extraordinary and terrifying. He holds the power to change the world, for better or for worse. The enemy is watching him closely, Jesus had told Zelda, showing her not just the potential for good in Musk's work, but the dangers that lurked in the shadows, waiting to twist his brilliance into something dark. Something that could sever humanity's connection to God and to each other. It was then that Dr. Reynolds, who had been standing silently in the corner of the room, chose to speak. His voice was hesitant, tinged with disbelief. "Mrs. Karishma," he began, "I don't mean to be disrespectful, but—" "I wasn't near death, Doctor," Zelda interrupted sharply, her tone unwavering. "I was dead. I know the difference. And what I saw, it wasn't a hallucination. It wasn't a dream. It was real." The room fell silent. Even Dr. Reynolds seemed unsure of how to respond. He opened his mouth, but no words came out. The beeping of the heart monitor beside her was the only sound filling the stillness. Amy, standing at the foot of her mother's bed, sighed. She had heard her mother's story many times by now, but the weight of it never seemed to ease. "Mom, even if this is real, what are we supposed to do about it? How are we supposed to help Elon Musk? We're just ordinary people." "By spreading the message," Zelda said, her voice firm despite the tremble in her hands. "By praying, not just for him, but for the world. This isn't just about one man, it's about all of us. The future isn't guaranteed. Jesus showed me both paths, and the one we want, a future of healing, connection, and faith, won't happen unless we act." Ethan, who had been skeptical since the beginning, was now leaning forward, his curiosity getting the better of him. "What did you see, exactly? What did these futures look like?" Zelda paused, her mind drifting back to the vivid images that had filled her soul. "In one future," she said slowly, her voice heavy with the weight of what she had witnessed, "the earth was vibrant, full of life. People lived in harmony with technology and nature. They used their innovations to heal, to connect, to grow closer to each other and to God." She paused again, as though gathering the strength to recount the second future, the darker one. But in the other future, it was cold, lifeless. Machines had taken over everything. People were no longer living. They were just existing. There was no love, no faith, no connection, only cold, mechanical efficiency. It was a world devoid of everything that makes us human. Caleb, who had been silently absorbing his grandmother's words, shuddered visibly. "And you think Elon Musk has the power to decide which of these futures we get?" "I know he does," Zelda replied, her eyes blazing with conviction. "But so do we, our prayers, our choices. They matter. The future isn't written in stone. There is still time, but it's running out. I could feel the gravity of her words weighing on us all. Despite their doubts, despite the skepticism that lingered in their eyes, I could see something else beginning to shift, a spark of belief, however faint. And for the first time in days, I too began to feel that hope. The days that followed Zelda's return from the brink were filled with strange occurrences, events I couldn't easily explain away. It started small. One evening, as she sat in her kitchen, a strange pulse seemed to reverberate through the house. The lights flickered in a steady rhythm, almost like a heartbeat. It wasn't just a power surge. It felt deliberate, as if the universe itself was trying to get her attention. I know this sounds ridiculous, Zelda confessed to me later, but it felt like a sign, a message, like someone or something was trying to communicate. And it didn't stop there. Amy and Zelda were in the living room when the television, which had been off, suddenly turned on by itself. It wasn't a random flicker. It was as if the television had been activated with intent. The screen was filled with static, but beneath the noise, a faint voice could be heard. It wasn't clear, but the urgency in the voice made the hair on the back of Amy's neck stand up. "What's happening, Mom?" she asked, eyes wide with fear. "I don't know," Zelda replied, but she didn't need to explain. We all understood, in that moment, that this wasn't just about one woman's experience. This was something bigger, something divine. "But I think it's connected to the message." Days later, the signs grew stronger. Lights would flicker in deliberate patterns. Unexplained sounds echoed through the house at odd hours. Footsteps, whispers, the hum of machinery that shouldn't have been there. The weather itself seemed to respond, with storms that appeared and disappeared without warning. It was as if the universe was leaning in, urging Zelda to continue telling her story, to pray, to spread the message of hope. But there was also a growing sense of resistance, an invisible force trying to interfere, to silence her. Ethan was the first to notice the pattern. "These things keep happening when you talk about the message," he said one afternoon, looking up from his notebook. "It's like something doesn't want you to tell people." Zelda nodded slowly, the weight of the truth settling on her shoulders. "There's something or someone trying to stop us, but we can't stop now." And so the message continues. A message that is bigger than any one person, any one country, or any one technology. It's a message of hope, of prayer, of faith, that even in the darkest times, we can still choose the light. Elon Musk's future, our future, is not set in stone. But what we do now, the prayers we offer, the choices we make, will determine which path we walk. The time to act is now. And Jesus is calling us to act with love, with faith, and with prayer. Amy looked skeptical, but didn't argue. She had seen enough to know that something was happening, even if she didn't fully believe my story. "So, what do we do?" she asked. "How do we stop it?" "We can't stop it," I said, "but we can keep going. The message has to get out, no matter what." As word of my experience spread, more people began to visit. Neighbors, church members, even strangers from other towns showed up at my door, curious to hear my story. Some came with open hearts, eager to listen. Others came with skepticism, ready to dismiss me as an old woman clinging to a delusion. But no matter their reaction, I told them the same thing. The future is not set in stone, and our prayers, our choices, and our actions matter more than ever. Not everyone believed me, of course. Some people laughed in my face. Others whispered behind my back, calling me crazy or attention-seeking. But there were also those who listened, really listened, and those were the people who gave me hope. One day, a reporter from the local news showed up at my door. His name was Mark, and he was young, sharp, and skeptical. "Mrs. Karishma," he said, holding a notebook and a recorder, "I've heard some interesting things about you. Do you mind if I ask a few questions?" I invited him in, knowing that this was part of the mission. He asked about my experience, about the visions, and about the message Jesus had given me. At first, his questions were dismissive, almost mocking. But as I spoke, his demeanor changed. By the time I finished, he was quiet, his pen resting on the page. "You really believe this, don't you?" he asked softly. "I don't just believe it," I said. "I know it. And deep down, you know it too." Mark left that day with more questions than answers. But I could tell I had planted a seed, and that was all I needed. The strange occurrences continued, but they didn't scare me anymore. If anything, they only strengthened my resolve. The message was bigger than me, bigger than my fear, and I was determined to see it through. As the days turned into weeks, my resolve to share the message grew stronger, even as the challenges seemed to multiply. The strange occurrences didn't stop. If anything, they intensified. Light flickered more often. Electronics malfunctioned without explanation, and the whispers in the silence of the night became louder, as if something unseen was watching, waiting. It wasn't just in my home anymore. Neighbors began reporting odd happenings too, unexplained power surges, strange feelings of unease, and even vivid dreams they couldn't explain. Despite the growing unease, I knew I couldn't let fear stop me. The visions I'd seen and the message Jesus had entrusted to me were too important. It wasn't about convincing everyone or gaining followers. It was about planting seeds, igniting conversations, and reminding people of the power they held to shape the future. But the weight of it all was heavy, and I often found myself turning to prayer for strength. One morning, as I sat by the window, watching the sunlight dance through the trees, Amy joined me. She had been quieter than usual lately, her skepticism tempered by the strange events she could no longer deny. She brought me a cup of tea and sat down, her hands wrapped around her own mug. "Mom," she began hesitantly, "do you ever wonder why this happened to you? Why not someone more, I don't know, someone more influential?" I smiled at her, appreciating her honesty. "I've thought about it a lot," I admitted. "But I think that's the point, Amy. If this message came from someone with power or fame, people would dismiss it as another agenda, another ploy for attention. But I'm just an ordinary woman. I have no reason to lie, no motive beyond sharing what I've seen. Maybe that's why Jesus chose me." Amy nodded slowly, her brow furrowed. "I want to believe you," she said softly. "I really do, but it's just so much to take in. Elon Musk, technology shaping the future. It feels so big." "It is big," I said gently. "But that's why it's so important. The world is changing faster than we can comprehend, and we're at a turning point. We need to remember what matters, what grounds us. And Elon Musk, he's at the heart of this shift. He's not a savior, Amy, but he's a man with incredible influence. What he chooses to do with that influence will ripple through the world." As we spoke, Ethan and Caleb arrived, their expressions more serious than usual. "Grandma," Ethan said, sitting down across from me, "we've been talking and, well, we want to help." I raised an eyebrow, surprised. "Help? How?" Caleb leaned forward, his voice steady. "By getting your message out. We've been looking online, researching what Musk is doing, his projects, his interviews, everything. People are already asking questions about the future of technology and how it'll affect humanity. If we share your story, maybe it'll make people think." My heart swelled with pride and gratitude. "That means more to me than you know," I said. "But you need to be careful. Not everyone will understand. Some people will mock you, call you crazy, just like they've done to me. We're ready for that," Ethan said firmly. "This is too important to stay silent." And so, with their help, my story began to spread. It started small. Ethan and Caleb shared my account on social media, writing about my experience with honesty and passion. At first, the responses were mixed. Some people were inspired, sharing the posts with comments about faith, hope, and the future. Others were dismissive, calling it a hoax or a desperate plea for attention. But as more people read the story, the conversation began to shift. Local news outlets picked up the story, interviewing me in my modest living room. Mark, the young reporter who had visited weeks earlier, returned with a camera crew, asking more in-depth questions. "Mrs. Karishma," he said during the interview, "what do you hope to achieve by sharing this message?" "I'm not trying to achieve anything," I said simply. "This isn't about fame or recognition. It's about reminding people of what matters. We're standing at a crossroads, Mark. The choices we make now, about technology, about humanity, about faith, will shape the future in ways we can't fully understand. My job is to share what I've seen. The rest is up to them." The interview aired that evening, and the response was overwhelming. People from all over the country, and even the world, began reaching out, sharing their thoughts, their prayers, and their own experiences. Some claimed they had also seen visions, felt a pull toward something greater. Others wrote to say that my story had made them think differently about technology and its role in their lives. Still, there were skeptics, and their voices were loud. But I didn't let them deter me. This wasn't about convincing everyone. It was about starting a conversation. As the message spread, the strange occurrences around me grew more intense. One night I awoke to find my room bathed in an eerie glow, though no light source could be found. The whispers, which had once been faint, were now distinct. Though I couldn't make out the words, it felt as though something was pushing back against the message, trying to stop it from reaching the people who needed to hear it. But the more resistance I faced, the more determined I became. I knew this wasn't just a test for Elon Musk or the world, it was a test for me, for my faith, for my courage, and I wasn't going to fail. One day, as I sat on my porch, a letter arrived. It was from a young woman named Maria who lived halfway across the country. In her letter, she described how she had been struggling with her faith, feeling lost in a world that seemed increasingly dominated by technology and disconnected from humanity. But after hearing my story, she had started praying again, asking for guidance and clarity. "Your story gave me hope," she wrote. "It reminded me that even in a world that feels cold and overwhelming, there is light, there is love, and there is a greater purpose. Thank you for sharing it." I held the letter close, tears streaming down my face. This was why I'd been sent back, not to change the world on my own, but to remind others that they had the power to change it together. Each prayer, each act of faith, each step toward kindness and connection was a thread in the fabric of the future. As I looked out at the horizon, I felt a deep sense of peace. The message was out there now, reaching hearts and minds in ways I could never have imagined. The future was still uncertain, still full of challenges, but I knew, without a doubt, that humanity had the strength to choose the path of light, and I would spend whatever time I had left reminding them of that truth. Let us raise our voices in praise to the Lord, the giver of life and light. As the Word of God tells us, "The Lord is my light and my salvation. Whom shall I fear?" Psalm 27:1. He is the light that shines in the darkness, the source of peace for our souls in these challenging times. Let us offer our praises from the depths of our hearts, together exalting our Lord, the one who is worthy of all honor and glory forever. Let us pray that the Lord grants us blessings and wisdom so that we may live lives worthy of His love and salvation. The Lord is near to all who call on Him, to all who call on Him in truth. Psalm 145:18. This is the assurance we have from God, that when we seek Him with all our hearts, He will answer us and bring His light into our lives. For God is light. In Him there is no darkness at all. 1 John 1:5. Let us walk in His light, for He guides our path and brings peace to our troubled hearts. Please leave a comment below so we can join together in thanksgiving and praise, praying for this world to be illuminated by His blessed light. The Lord is our hope and our only Savior. Remember to subscribe to the channel and like this video so you don't miss any other content full of blessings from God.